Hi, welcome to Rising Above. My name is Portia Jackson Preston. I am an assistant professor of public health at California State University, Fullerton. I'm so excited to have you participating in this program. I'd like to spend some time this week just talking about what we're going to be discussing and why is it so important for us to be focusing on stress management and self-care at this point in our lives. Well, if we look at just this month, there was a recent survey that was done on stress in America. And in January of 2021, 8 in 10 Americans reported that they felt emotions related to stress. Of those who reported these emotions, the most common was anxiety, followed by sadness and feelings of anger. In fact, the levels of stress that were reported in January 2021 were higher compared to every time since April of 2020, which was roughly 1 month into the COVID-19 pandemic and its spread in the United States. So it's fair to say that people have been more stressed than ever recently. If we think about some of the factors that have contributed to this, one, of course, is the prolonged COVID-19 pandemic, along with other issues like social injustice and systemic racism and political uncertainty. But if you look at this graph here, this is the response that we expect to see emotionally following a disaster. The first thing I want you to think about is the fact that COVID-19 has been here for a long time. It didn't just come and go quickly. So there was no one impact point. We've had a prolonged impact. And you can see here the emotional highs that came in the heroic and honeymoon phases, perhaps when we were cheering on essential workers and sticking together to really try to slow the curve. However, this is traditionally followed by a period of disillusionment. And you can see that as there are trigger events, perhaps some of the surges that we've experienced, people's emotions go up and down. And so at the time that we are recording this, we are coming up on the 1 year anniversary of the pandemic. And as you can see with that time, there is a bit of a high, but we continue to experience setbacks as we start to work through our grief and come to terms with the loss and perhaps the alteration of our society from normal. So I want you to take into account that this is no ordinary disaster that's over and done with. This is something that we'll be grappling with for the next several years. So I wanted to share this with you just to say that whether you are feeling safe right now, or if you're feeling unsafe, if you feel emotionally well, or if you're beginning to feel stressed, all of this is understandable. And I hope that this program will give you a compass to navigate some of the emotions that you're experiencing. The American Psychological Association, which has been conducting these stress in American surveys, has begun to provide tips on things that people can do to manage stress, such as taking breaks from the news and social media, practicing gratitude, thinking about what you're grateful for each day. Their next recommendation is to practice self care in small increments throughout the day, staying connected with friends and family, and keeping things in perspective. The great news I have to tell you is that this program is going to lead you to consider all of these things. So if this is something you haven't been doing constantly in your day-to-day life, that's okay. This program is here to help you get back on board with that. And we're going to do that by focusing on your self-care and developing a plan that works for your life. I'd like to show you this wellness wheel because it gives you a way to think about areas of wellness that are important to you. As you can see, there are 8 areas here, and you can just take a moment to think about which of these appeal to you. For example, emotional wellness, the ability to understand yourself and cope with challenges. This is definitely something we're going to be focusing on in the program. Spiritual wellness, the ability to establish peace and harmony in our lives. And I would add to that, being connected to something outside of yourself, whether it's nature, whether it's your faith. This is something that we're also going to focus on. Another area that's going to be very important for this program is physical wellness, the ability to maintain a healthy quality of life without undue fatigue or physical stress. We're going to ask you questions about your social wellness, your ability to relate and connect with other people, and we're going to help you identify some of the resources you have access to. In addition to these areas, we're going to invite you to consider other areas of wellness that you might want to address during this program. So, for this week, we are going to start out by having you develop the early stages of a self care plan. We're going to take our time in this program. So, I'm going to introduce you to just the first couple of worksheets, and I'm going to show you so you have an idea of what they look like. But you will be receiving a workbook that has links to this free self care plan that you can feel free to share with family and friends. The first thing that you're going to do, and again, I'm just going to scroll through each of these, you're going to be looking at your lifestyle behaviors and identifying the things that you do when you're under stress, whether they are positive or negative. Now, keep in mind when you fill out these worksheets, we will not be asking you for your details. Those are private for you to keep to yourself. But this is going to give you something to think about. The next thing that you'll do is go through a self care assessment. These are 3 different pages, and you will have links to this, and you'll be able to rate how frequently you do these activities. Now, if some of them don't apply to you, it is really okay to skip them. But this worksheet is intended to get you to start thinking about which areas of self care are really important to me in my life right now and would help me to be more resilient and be able to bounce back from the challenges and adversities that I'm facing at this time in my life. Once you've done that, all we're going to ask you to do on this sheet is to capture your current practices. You don't need to think yet about what your new practices will be. We'll work on that together throughout this program. And again, we will be focusing on some of these areas. But as you can see here, these are the areas in the self care plan, and they map not quite directly onto the wellness wheel. So there's some flexibility here. If you like one title better than the other, use the one that appeals to you. And keep in mind that 2 people can have very different areas of priority and both be addressing their self care. So there's no pressure here for you to get all of this right. Another thing we'll talk about in this program is some of the barriers that you face when it comes to practicing self care. And we're going to help you think about ways that you can overcome that. Our goal is for you to finish this program and really have a toolkit that you can use for stress management and self care in your everyday life. So, we're going to be asking you to try out some practices so that you can figure out what works best for you. So, what you can expect in the weeks ahead, we are going to have periodic surveys just to assess where you are currently and how you are dealing with stress and your practice of self care. Those are the surveys we're going to be asking you to fill out at the beginning and the end and at a follow up date. Each week, you're going to be receiving videos. I will generally do an overview video, and you will also receive activities to facilitate your practice of self care in a given area. And each of these practices should take no more than 15 minutes. So you will have a couple of those each week. The last thing we'll ask you to do is just to reflect on what you learned that week. So again, we want you to keep your answers private. This is not a matter of needing a lot of detail from you, but we do just want to understand what are you learning from this journey. So those will be more general. I want to say thank you so much for taking the time to join us on this journey. And we're so excited for what we're going to achieve together and rising above.